Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors, and if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one is titled HOA and the Meadow. I was slightly familiar with HOAs, but honestly, I thought they existed in uppity townhome communities where every single house looked the same. It was just my ignorance. When I bought this house with my family a couple of years ago, I was surprised to learn that that neighborhood had an HOA. The neighborhood itself was very spacious, and although we were not necessarily in a rural area, we were in the countryside. Our property alone was about 5 acres. This was much different to the city life we experienced before, but the house was beautiful, and as soon as we laid our eyes upon it, my wife and daughter were already talking about what they could do with so much yard and field space. I decided to not let the fact that it was part of an HOA discourage us, and we bought the house. Red flag number 1, guys. Anyway, our backyard was more like a giant field because of how big it was. The space around the house really was beautiful, much like the neighborhood we resided in. We were lucky enough to be surrounded by bright green fields, big trees, and small rolling hills. It was great to sit out on the porch and really just observe the greatness that Mother Nature had to offer. However, it would be a lie to say that some of our yard did not look unkept. The previous owners did not seem to maintain anything within the yard, so we decided right away that we should. We wanted to let Mother Nature grow whatever she wanted. On top of that, the previous owner also had cows that would graze the field, so we were excited to see what it would look like once we let it flourish. This seemed like a great thing to us, and I think many would agree. I mean, what's better than letting Mother Nature take back what is hers, right? Well, who would have known that the next 4 years, yes, 4 years, we would be battling with the HOA about the yard that had turned into a little meadow. I would like to clarify that while we did let the grass and other plants grow in the field, we also kept it maintained. This is important because the HOA made it seem like our yard was messy or not maintained. The first time we got a complaint was after it was discovered that we had 2 rescued chickens in our backyard. They were not actually our pets, but we had found them, and we were holding them for about a week until one of our friends who works in the animal rescue business could come by and pick them up. They were in a little fenced area, and one day our neighbor saw them and immediately complained to the HOA. We were not allowed to have any pets unless it was a dog or cat per the HOA. I will admit that I was in the wrong for having the chickens in my backyard because I knew I was not allowed to have them. However, I also want to highlight that these chickens were not pets to us, nor did we plan to keep them in our backyard. Well, this sparked an entire debate about the grass in our yard and the little meadow that had grown. Because, according to the HOA, no one was able to notice the chickens because of how overgrown our meadow was. The HOA issued us letter after letter saying that our meadow needed to be mowed or we would be fined for every day that it wasn't. In one of their letters, the HOA stated that the existence of a meadow instead of a trimmed green lawn with grasses and bushes that rise from 2 to 5 feet tall is not a standard that the community wants, nor does it conform to the standards of the HOA. I thought this was BS, because the field behind our house was clearly not a lawn, and nor had it ever been. This was like eating an apple and getting upset because it does not taste like an orange. Besides that, why should I really care what the community wants or what my neighbor wants? As long as I'm not harming anyone, it should not matter what I'm doing with my property. I had kindly sent them back a letter with the help of a lawyer. In my letter I stated that it was unfair to compare our yard to a lawn. While many residents of the neighborhood had decided to transform their space into fenced-in lawn areas, we were one of the few that didn't. Besides this, most of the meadow was only visible from the roads and adjacent lots in the spring months. We always maintained it afterwards, but the issue was that it was too tall for HOA standards. And also that it was not a picket fence lawn like many of the other neighbors. We did not fit in with the neighborhood, is what I was hearing from the HOA. Well, this started another string of letters and complaints. The HOA was trying to compromise with us. The first time they said that they would let us keep it if we mowed it every 4 weeks. This did not make any sense to us because a month is no time for anything to really grow back. And that really was the whole point of us embracing the meadow and field behind us. We wanted the grass, plants and biodiversity to flourish. It was Mother Nature's right after all. After we promptly refused, the HOA sent another letter stating that we could keep it if we mowed it 3 times a year. Again, this is not what we wanted. It completely defeated the purpose of letting the field grow. So we refused once again. The HOA sent us a letter once again. In this letter they said they would not approve any future sales of the property and house if we did not cut down the meadow. This was so weird to me because never once did we mention selling the house. And second, even if we did, what if the new buyer also wanted to let the meadow flourish? The whole thing made no sense to me and I was tired of trying to understand it. After the last letter, I decided to get lawyers involved. At this point, it felt like my family and I were being harassed by the HOA. I understand that they did not like our meadow, but everything else about our property, house and even driveway fit the HOA standards. I was tired of dealing with the HOA over something that didn't matter and for something that did not devalue my home. I don't know, but somehow with the help of a great lawyer that was recommended to us through a friend, we were able to gather the letters and evidence and went to trial. Of course, this did end up being a bit costly, and with all of the back and forth with the HOA for the last couple of years, altogether we ended up spending about $80,000 throughout the years on this issue alone. However, just 2 days before the trial was set to start, the HOA revoked their order for us to mow down our meadow and said that we could keep it. What a waste of time! According to the HOA's decision to let us keep our meadow, they stated that they intended to review its covenants to clarify property maintenance requirements based on community needs and resident input. Sounds like BS, right? Right. They still had to go to court though, so I was happy about that. In the end, the court ordered the HOA to pay us back $80,000 in order to cover the costs of the whole ordeal, and also to cover the costs of the legal fees while dealing with this. They had cost us so much money only to rebuke their decision in the end to attempt to save themselves. I guess that did not work out too well. And yeah, ripe stars, I would say in this situation the old phrase, play stupid game, win stupid prizes definitely applies. In addition, if you have watched until here and enjoy the stories about crazy HOAs, then I would really appreciate it if you could also like the video, because recently we have pretty much always reached 1000 plus likes on the video, which is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, and it would be awesome if we could keep that up. And the next one is titled, Boss Fired Me, I Turned Her Career Upside Down. Many years ago, I accepted a job in an industry I was trying to break into for many years before. This was my first professional job and I was still pretty naive on the business dynamics, meaning I did not play the way they wanted me to. For many of the people I worked with, this was fine. My boss, Nina, was something else. I learned pretty quickly to just go with the flow and remain under her radar. This worked for a time before I could not handle it anymore, and I will get to that shortly. Nina prided herself on getting things handled when nobody else can. This was likely because of how relentless she was. She believed she was friends with everybody, but I think most people were doing exactly like I was trying to keep her happy, just so she didn't get worse. One such event was the placement of a new temporary, only in the fact that the company didn't want to build a new structure, building. There were many questions raised about the legality of the placement, but Nina worked her magic and the building was placed right where she wanted it. This was ideal for her since she could pick the office with the best view. Keep in mind that this trailer was maybe 2 steps above a festival porta potty. The way she spoke about it, you would think she was describing the Sistine Chapel. As time went on, I learned why this placement was so important to her. Her husband's company was contracted to perform the work. Ethics be damned, this didn't sit well with me, and I started noticing a trend in her contractors' preferences. It always leaned towards those that used her husband's company. I tried to address this with her personally, which would only result in her using her experience to teach me that there are many aspects I don't understand for selecting contractors. I tried to bring this to the attention of people that could do something about it, but they all seemed to fear her as well. This facility has a lot of safety rules, and for good reason, with the number of hazards around. However, people had a habit of assuming a rule for a specific location of the facility applied to the entire facility. One rule being facial hair. Specific areas required respirators, so facial hair was not allowed. I didn't work in any of those areas, nor anywhere remotely close to them. I still shaved regularly, but I wanted a bit of growth for my wedding. Months prior, I asked Nina if it was okay to grow it out for a month prior, and she agreed. We discussed it every 1 to 2 weeks until that month prior. The first Monday I showed up with a week's worth of growth, she lost her mind and began screaming at me. I stood up for myself without getting angry, and she continued to scream at me. Eventually, I relented and tried to defuse the situation. While I was able to get the safety department to approve my beard, I still received a message that I was youthfully defiant from my boss. From that point forward, all conversations were strictly professional from me, little to no emotion, to the point, nothing personal. For the following months, Nina became much more critical of my work. Directions she sent me in email and either matched or exceeded her requirements were immediately rejected, and I had to recreate them with a new set of requirements. Literally, math became a point of contention, nothing complex either. Basic arithmetic was scrutinized to the point that I had to explain, and this is not a joke, 8 + 1 = 9. My days were obviously outnumbered. Earlier this year, I was rushed to the hospital for a possible heart attack. I am early 30s by the way. Ultimately, it was determined to be because of major work stress and my diet, since I was forbidden from lunch in the end. After a few days in the hospital, my wife is given notification that I am being fired. To this day, I've not been given a reason for being fired. The problem for my now former boss is that I have plenty of free time now. The first part started when coworkers began reaching out to see how my health was, and I would subtly mention being fired. If they asked, I would give as much detail without seeming malicious. This information started spreading quickly, and people began to put their walls around Nina. Evidently, I had built a decent relationship with my peers. My next step was to call the corporate ethics hotline and leave an anonymous message about her blatant conflicts of interest with applicable project names and rough dates, making also sure to mention her husband and his company by name. The first sign that this call was effective came 2 weeks later when I learned that her Sistine Chapel had been condemned for being placed on a fault line and had to be vacated immediately. She was forced into a basement office with 2 other people. The good news for her is that she doesn't have to spend much time in that new office though. She is spending more than 50% of her time in a remote location in Alaska that requires at minimum 2 days of travel one way. Additionally, she has been denied a replacement for me. This means she must perform all duties I did on top of her normal tasks, not a great deal when you are salaried. In the end, she has alienated herself and is receiving no support. She travels mostly on her own time and spends more time in an airport working than in her office. Meanwhile, I have accepted a great job that has significantly reduced my blood pressure. Her last 5 years before retirement are going to be rough. I didn't do much, but isn't the best revenge to live your best life? And of course, ripe stars, since we have read a few previous stories that pretty much came to the same conclusion, I would definitely agree with that. Some of the best revenges you can have is a life well lived. And the next one was posted by user FanksMcWolf on our own subreddit r/ripe stories, and it is titled, Karen tries to accuse me of stalking her in a grocery store. On Tuesday, January 26th, 2021, in the later part of the afternoon, I went to my local Kroger to do a little bit of shopping. I am known in the store from shopping there often, and also I will talk to the employees. Side note here, I believe this is a great store because of the awesome employees who seem friendly and respectful. I've been shopping there well over a decade and I can count the number of issues I've had with anyone there on one hand. And this also includes times of actually consulting with the manager about it. I've been to other Kroger stores, but I felt like people were there more for the paycheck than to put forth their best efforts. So, I am in the produce department talking to one of the ClickList employees about different things, including the fact that there was a good deal on 2-pound bags of shrimp, de-shelled, deveined, ready to just cook and eat with no hassle. I notice a woman walking past with her mask below her nose and I quietly comment how I think she is a rather attractive woman. Small chuckle from the employee considering that came out of nowhere, and a couple of minutes later when I see the woman again, I mention, quietly, or so I thought, that she would be even more attractive if she was wearing her mask correctly. Yes, readers, I done goofed, I won't deny it. She, Karen, then got my attention and was like, "Do you have something to say to me?" I responded by saying no, with the thought of trying to avoid a confrontation, because obviously no good would come from saying yes. She then mentioned about me having said something about her mask, to which I said I'd been talking about the sale Kroger had on shrimp, which was true. I had been talking about that, though I had lied to her by denying any comments about her mask. I then left and walked a short distance over to the island where the bags of shrimp are kept at and grabbed a couple of bags, checking to make sure that I grabbed the correct bags. And guess who suddenly approaches me? Go ahead, take a wild guess. I bet you would never in a million years believe it, but it was the Karen that I had left behind. She approached me, with her kids in tow, fussing at me about how I had been talking about her. My thought was, it's called free speech, lady, get over it, while still telling her that I'd been talking about the sale on the shrimp. Since I had 2 bags of the shrimp, I went back towards the produce area to try to show the employee which bags I was referring to, since she didn't know about the sale herself. I did not see her, but I did have the Karen following me while still fussing up a storm. Get this, and I wish I was making this up, she even had the audacity to try to claim to be related to the person that owned the store. No one owns the store, it is part of a bigger company. It's not a fast food joint either, so it is not a franchised store. I cannot believe that she actually thought I would suddenly start kissing her butt for some sort of forgiveness. At any rate, she finished her spiel while I was still looking for that employee and went on towards the meat department. A little info here, the layout of the store when standing outside facing towards the store is that the bakery/deli departments are along the far right wall, with cheese and sushi island stations, middle of the floor, are next, and then the produce department. That is all in the far right area when you first enter from that side of the store. Along the back to the left of the bakery is the meat department. Going along the back, it is the meat department that spans close to the halfway point of the store, and then it goes into dairy-like products including yogurt and then juices and some other stuff. At the end of that wall is a diagonal wall with milk and some other dairy products. Then along the far left wall are eggs and cheese, etc. After not seeing the employee, I decided to continue with my shopping, making a mental note to return later. I went towards the meat department to look for a roast that was on sale. Without realizing it, I had gone by where it was, and guess who I hear complaining about me to a different employee? If you guess Karen, you would be wrong. Just kidding, it was her, and she then made a comment asking if I was following her. Seriously? The only time that I went in the same direction as you, and suddenly I am following you after you literally followed me only a few minutes earlier. I told her that she is paranoid and needs help while I continued on past her. I went looking for the beef, but on a quick glance I did not see it and I realized I may have already passed it. I decided against backtracking because I knew that might definitely appear as though I was trying to cause problems and made another return later mental note. So then I proceeded out of the main meat area and passed the other part of the meats, which consisted of hot dogs, bacon, sausage, pre-packed deli meats, etc., and noticed one of the store managers pop out of the doors from the back. I gave him a brief rundown of what was going on, admitting that I had lied to her for the purpose of trying to avoid an incident, so he got a laugh from it and I continued on my way. I grab the milk, 1 gallon regular price, half gallon marked down. We go through milk fast enough that it is not an issue. Next I went to the cheese section, far left of the store near the front, as there was a sale on that too. I grabbed some cheese packages and, going along the front of the store, went back towards produce to see if that employee had returned. To quote from someone else's story here on Reddit, this turned out to be a mistake. Guess who wandered back into the produce department and was talking to that very same employee? Yes, it is facepalm time. So I went up to her, employee, and showed her the bag of shrimp I had been talking about, and then went towards the meat department a second time to look for the roast. I saw a meat employee and started up a conversation with him. Like I said, great employees here, fun to talk to. Never saying anything about the Karen because quite frankly, I had no reason to. So then I go back to produce. She had made her way towards the bakery area to look for something else that I needed to get and started a conversation with another customer because of the shirt they had on, which was a Snoopy shirt. A couple of minutes into that and an officer approaches me. Karen had called the cops claiming that I was following her around the store. This was funny and sad at the same time, as she had convinced a couple of the employees to vouch for her claim as well, at least according to the officer. I told him my version of events, detailing the route that I almost always take when I go shopping there, right part of the store, along the back towards the left, and then back to the front of the store. Also pointed out that there are security cameras all over the store and all but begged for him to view the footage of my activities in the store to verify what I was saying. Because I hate for there to be any doubt on my word. Pointed out that there was no way I could know that she was back in the produce department when the last I saw her was in the meat department and I couldn't see her movements from where I had gone. Told him how I tried to avoid a conflict by saying no when she asked me if I had anything to say to her and that I had indeed lied to her by denying saying anything about her mask. Because, again, trying to avoid an incident. Officer then had to check with one of the front supervisors to see what they wanted to do. What got me worried was that it was someone I hadn't heard of before, new supervisor in store, because if they chose for one/both of us to be trespassed, I would have to deal with the hassle of getting that reversed, at least for myself. Thankfully though, they didn't want to go that route. The last I saw of Karen was when she was leaving with the officer behind her. I don't believe she got trespassed from the store, but rather may have tried to play it up by pretending to fear for her own safety. I'm thinking, lady, you approached me to cause a conflict when I obviously didn't want one, and I did nothing to give you a reason to be concerned for your safety. Like, wow. You think it ends here? Well, mostly it does, but there was a teeny tiny piece of aftermath. When I returned to the store a few days later, one of the employees from the cheese department, who I suspect believes what the Karen was claiming and thinks I'm some sort of a bad guy now, was like, "Weren't you banned from the store?" Well, I wasn't, so I told her no. She's been giving me the cold shoulder since then, and I wonder what other lies Karen told others to make them think that I'm off, even though they should know me better than that. And yeah, I know, not your typical Karen, but a Karen nonetheless. She felt that she could approach me, but then claim that I was the one following her. She felt the need to create a situation despite someone clearly not wanting one. I did not try to start something with her and I didn't violate her or her rights in any way, but she wanted to start something up. It still boggles my mind that she not only did that, but then she also tried to claim that a relative of hers owned the store and thus could get me kicked out or something else along those lines. I honestly wish I had recorded the encounter because it would be funny to play that part back. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.